Yeah, baby, that opening fires me up for draft talk. I am so excited about tonight's Draft on Tap with Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski. Before we get started, I got to tell you, I have put in a bunch of hours today into draft coverage. Greg Gabriel and I spent 2.5 hours recording segments for our new Barroom Draft Exclusives, which is on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Barroom Draft. Tons of new material is going to be posted over the next few days from Danny and from Greg. It's really in-depth, into the weeds kinds of scouting reports that you would see in publications and so forth, but it's all tailored for the Chicago Bears fan. So you've got to jump in on that. And then also, I am super psyched about the private party that Neil and Danny are throwing on virtual reality on our screens here. And it just is the cost of a shot and a beer in some places, or maybe just a beer at the ballpark, $10 to join them in this private chat, and it's a private party, so you can ask all your questions. You can bring in your mock drafts. You can get into the weeds with them, challenge them on their evaluations. It'll be great fun, and it'll be 60 to 90 minutes long. It's on March 1st. All you got to do is send me an email at aldo@bearsbarroom.com. It's up on the screen there, and I will reserve a spot for you. There are limited spots available, so please act quickly, as they say in the commercials. Let me bring in the guys. First of all, I usually bring in Danny first, but I think Niel Stopczynski deserves this honor tonight. Neil, how are you, my friend?
My dog. I appreciate the love there. I appreciate the love, man. It's been a crazy week and a half, dude.
Yeah.
With the entire week last week, I mean, it was just nonstop film, nonstop chaos, nonstop just football. With National Signing Day was Wednesday, which pretty much carried into a National Signing Weekend almost, with all the things we had to catch up on and everything else. We had Senior Bowl all week that I was watching, or at least trying to watch film on. Didn't get a chance to access the film until later on in the week, but that's another story for another day. Mm-hmm. But it was, great week worth of football. I'm finally starting to recover a little bit from last week. Sleepless days and nights and all those different types of things. And, man, it's just been nuts. It's just been nuts.
I tell you, I got a kick out of watching my kids and my wife Christmas shop and stuff. I wish they got a kick out of watching me pour over these scouting prospects and so forth, and being so involved in this, because it really is great fun for us. And I know one guy who's having a ton of fun is this gentleman here. His name is Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you, my friend?
What's going on, guys? What's going on? I'm having a great time, actually. Just came back from Vegas watching the East-West Shrine practices, and I was telling Aldo, man, I need a bump in pay, man, because that was the first time I was in Vegas. I didn't party at all. I don't even think I had any alcohol. I mean, I was just straight up watching practice, taking a look at film, running the course. Well, that's the truth. That's the truth, Neil. That is the honest truth. And I feel bad for not doing anything, but but I had a great time. Obviously, get to mingle with some of these players. Met some of the the contacts I have in the NFL down there. Got some nice information that we'll probably be sharing as the weeks come along here, especially for our Patreon followers.
Yeah, especially for them, but also I'm so excited about this party. I got a little commercial. Let's run it right now because I really want to emphasize how cool this party is going to be that you two guys are hosting. I'm going to be just in the background on that particular show. I want you guys to interact with our fans in such a huge way that they will, want to send you Christmas gifts. So
here's the bouncer in case it gets a little too rowdy in there. You come in and break it up.
There you go. I haven't been a bouncer in about 40 years, but I can pretend to be one. Hey everyone, want to let you know that Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski are co-hosting a private draft talk party. That's right, it's private. For 90 minutes, you can join the Draft on Tap co-hosts and get the type of quality draft talk you yearn for as much as I yearn for my maker's mark. You lead the discussion. Talk about your favorite prospect and get Danny and Neil's analysis. If you want, share your favorite mock with the guys or bring up a prospect off everyone's radar. The cost is only a $10 donation, or as we say here at the Barroom, a $10 cover charge. You'll get 90 minutes of your personalized draft talk and even get a copy of the video to share with your friends. Now, there are only 7 slots available. That's right, only 7, so you must act fast. What you need to do is email me at aldo@beersbarroom.com. Tell me you want to party with the guys, and I'll get you the information you need. The party is Wednesday, March 1st at 8 p.m. Central, so don't hesitate. It's only a $10 donation, the cost of a beer and a shot of whiskey. In some places in America, a beer and a shot of whiskey. That's going to be a blast. I can't wait for that day to happen. But we've got so much to do here. You guys will be, by the way, leading the discussion with Danny and Neil at that party. I am leading the discussion today. And what I want to start off with first is the importance of these all-star games. There's lots of varying opinions on that, but it's clear that a really good performance during Shrine Bowl week practices, Senior Bowl week practices can be huge, even much huger than the actual game itself. I'll go back to Danny and I, 4 years ago, we're at the Senior Bowl and we're watching Terry McLaurin play, and we quickly saw, whoa, a minute, this is not the guy we necessarily saw at Ohio State. And in fact, Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, brought that up this week.
So Terry that year was like a 5 or a 6, and I told Terry when he got here, God honest truth, that I invited him up his punt cover stuff, like watching him as a gunner, because that's where you really saw the speed show up. And you remember, he was the number 2 receiver to Paris Campbell that year, and we sent an invite to Paris Campbell, and he didn't accept it. And so when Terry got down here, I'm like, well, at least we know he can run. We know he's a really high character guy. The people at Ohio State loved him. And so for him to come down and run routes the way he ran routes, and you didn't see it at Ohio State, because that's one of the huge benefits for the wideouts is you get some of these college offenses and they're not running NFL routes. So Terry was like a 5 or a 6, and he goes in the 3rd for a kid from Ohio State to jump 2 or 3 rounds. That's a massive jump. And now in hindsight, he should have been in the 1st. He got way underdrafted. So yeah, he's doing all right. He's doing all right.
He's doing quite well. He'd be doing even better if he was wearing navy blue and burnt orange, but who knows? Maybe that'll happen in the future. All right, guys.
I remember that week or that year, although I said this guy is a hell of a special teams player. Right? He's out here creating separation. He's running terrific routes, crisp routes. I mean, the way he ability to stem the routes at the top of his routes, and that year was awesome. And obviously it goes from a 5th, 6th round pick to a, like Jim said, to a 3rd round pick. But I have a couple of guys that I've eyed so far, and I think I'm not saying they're gonna be Terry McLaurin good, but they're gonna go late in the draft that have a chance to be some playmakers here at the next level. So stay tuned for those.
Well, Danny, why don't we start with you and start with A.T. Perry, because I know that's a guy that really caught your eye down in Las Vegas for the East-West Shrine Bowl game. A.T. Perry, the wideout out of Wake Forest. Take it away, my friend.
Well, A.T. Perry is a guy, actually, although I've liked throughout the season. Him and Zay Flowers were both receivers that I've always talked about in terms of this upcoming draft and guys that the Bears could look at, right? I think, and to be honest, I think watching the week-long practices there, also the game as well, the talent there, was probably day 3 talent in terms of what was at the East-West Shrine game, except for A.T. Perry and possibly Zay Flowers. I think those guys have a chance to go day 2. But with A.T. Perry, what I like and what I've liked all along is the size, the body control, the 6'3", 195, almost 34-inch arm length. This is a kid that gets downfield. He's a guy that for these, these jump ball opportunities will go up there and extend away from his frame, bring in the reception. Terrific body control to be able to contour his body, his frame, to make acrobatic catches downfield. And here you see creating some separation. He's not going to be a guy that's going to blaze the 40 at the combine. He's going to run anywhere between a high 4.5, maybe mid 4.5s, but he's a guy that knows how to be able to stem his route at the top of his route there, get some separation, especially on those slant routes, utilize his body, his frame to be able to give the quarterback a nice target to throw to. And again, we talked about the size, 6'3", almost 34-inch arms to be able to extend away from his frame, adjust for those. And this is a guy that I can see in the NFL being a superior threat in terms of like those back shoulder throws. Anything you kind of throw him open into the corner of the end zone. His ability to get down there and get open and make plays. There's a couple highlights that I don't think we have for here right now, but he's just running down and just contouring his body and making a hell of a catch in the end zone. So A.T. Perry is a kid that I liked a lot. The only question with him is going to be his speed. Some teams who want guys that create that instant separation off the line of scrimmage, are not going to look at A.T. Perry, but guys who like bigger body receivers, teams who like big body receivers, guys that can make plays down a football field, even if he's covered, he's not covered. You know what I'm saying? He's one of those kind of receivers where you just throw the ball in his vicinity, he can go up and make a play on a football. So that's why I like A.T. Perry a lot.
Neil, have you had a chance to take a look at A.T. Perry? Because I'm interested in your thoughts on this big wide receiver.
Only really what I saw during game day. Unfortunately, they didn't have the practices for East West Shrine game televised. I haven't gone that deep into film on that particular position as of yet. But you love the kid's size, you love the length of his arms. All the things that Danny talked about are incredibly enticing types of things. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the dynamic catches that was actually one of the dynamic offensive plays that was actually made in that game was by A.T. Perry, I think. If you correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, I'm having a hard time remembering.
There was a play,
an East West Shrine game, or I know there's a practice throw where I don't think we have a clip here, but I saw the practice tape where he does a nice job in terms of getting open. Again, what he showed at the practices and is what's I caught some scouts' eyes and his ability in terms of being able to create some separation over the top with some leverage and running away from defenders. His feet at the top of his route are really quiet, especially for a bigger guy. That's something you don't find a lot. When these guys stop at the top of the route and they sink their hips, you hear the pitter pattering of their feet, but his guy's got quiet feet for such a big angular receiver. So, and what he was doing, like I said, he was creating some separation at the East West Shrine practices, something that he hadn't really done throughout his collegiate career on tape. But again, he was running a little bit more quicker, a little bit more faster. So, if that continues, and if he goes in the combine and runs a crazy 40 time, who knows? They train for these things. They might get him to a point where he runs a 4.4, high 4.4. Then you can see this kid definitely going in a second round.
Neil, I want to stay on the wide receiver track. I know you took a close look at Nathaniel Tank Dell. Frankly, I don't think I recall seeing him play a game during the regular season. So when I got there to the Senior Bowl, I was super impressed with what I saw. Tell me what you saw in his practice tape.
Yeah, Nathaniel Tank Dell. I don't think anybody called him Nathaniel all week. I think it was just Tank, the entire time. But Tank Dell from Houston. We talked on the last show about a lot of guys that I brought up that I was going to take a look at, and team captain was one of the things that I brought up as just from an intangible standpoint, something I love to see, because that means leadership, that means intangibles, that means you're probably a grown up, you know how to handle yourself right, you bring your teammates with you, you have great energy, you have all these different types of things that make you a great locker room guy. And the one thing that Poles wants to always talk about is the kind of character and the culture of the locker room. So right away you look at that and you think to yourself, okay, well, this kid's got it together, right? Not a very big kid at all. He's 5'8" and 3/8, 163 pounds. But the thing about Tank is that he is explosive and he's fast. And in the way that he runs his routes, he is extremely violent in the sense that he can easily create separation. He's very sharp in the cuts that he makes. He's got great juice out of his breaks. And that allows him to make big plays very easily, seemingly. And as you're watching the film here, there's typically nobody within 5-10 yards of him. He's getting past the secondary. He's in the open space. He's finding the holes. He was a very impressive player to watch all week. But specifically, I was thinking back last year. I think it was last year when Calvin Austin from Memphis was in this particular bowl game. The way that he went about his business at practice, the way that he broke off routes, how violent he was with his feet, how much juice he carried out of his breaks, it was extremely impressive. And that kid ended up going day 2. Tank, I think, has probably better speed than Calvin Austin carried last year. But as I look at it right now, 20.16 is what he clocked on the zebra all week. And, the kid to me was just entirely impressive. He's not going to blow you away with his measurables. He's not a big kid. He's going to be a slot guy. He's going to be a mismatch, freak. But, the way that he went about practice all week was eye-opening.
Really was one of the fastest guys at Mobile, as you said. And some people, for some reason, were surprised by that. But whatever. Danny, I know you've taken a look at some of his play. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what Niel's talked about and what we saw in Mobile was pretty much, what you're talking about. Guys that's probably going to be a slot receiver, diminutive in size, quicker. A guy that can, if you give him a two-way go, he's a guy that can, go ahead and create some separation. That was what he was doing down in Mobile in terms of one-on-one. His ability to be able to create separation and leave the DB in his dust. But the one concern is, guys, he's 5'8", 163. If you see his legs, I mean, they're skinny. I think I had skinny legs. I think his legs are skinnier than mine. But obviously he's explosive, right? So that's the thing, is like with these kind of receivers, and we've seen it before. We've seen it during Eskridge's. We've seen some other guys come down there and just create some huge separation on one-on-ones, use their quickness or speed, but then they go, round 3 or in some cases round 4. So I think the same thing with Tank. I think, a team that's going to take him is going to have a team that's going to not really rely on him to be a number 1 option. He's going to be a number 4, number 5 receiver, a guy they can use in different ways, gadget plays, jet sweeps, bubble screens, slip screens, like I said, in the slot. But it's going to be a team that has weapons and can't afford to use a pick on a kid that's come in and be an extra, weapon, if you will. But yeah, in terms of quickness and in terms of, again, his quarterback was down there in Mobile, clean too. And so I think, that was a nice kind of, a plus for him there as well. But I mean, no doubt, you put the tape on, you see him one-on-one coverage, there's no DB that can stay within 5-10 yards of him, because he's got that type of separation and the quickness, especially if you give him a two-way go.
Mm-hmm. I think he's a valuable type. Oh, you're muted, Neil.
Yeah, my bad. I had to let the cat out. There are way too many opinions. I think what you wish you could have seen this year was what Calvin Austin would have done at Pittsburgh before he got hurt, because I think that would have been a pretty good precursor as to what you might see with Tank, how he would have been used, the kind of offensive sets he would have been a part of, probably return man on special teams with the kind of dynamic playmaking ability that he has. But I think what you saw this year was pretty much the same thing that you saw last year with Calvin, a kid that just went in and ripped up practice and created a lot of separation and kind of like dominated the one-on-ones. He's a kid that could be taken early by, like Danny said, a team that has, enough draft capital to go ahead and take a chance on a guy that already has some weapons.
All right, let's stay with the wide receivers, Danny. Why don't you give me Antoine, what's his last name?
Antoine Green from North Carolina.
That's the guy. Talk to me about him.
Antoine Green from North Carolina is a guy, honestly, guys, I had not watched on tape, going down to Vegas to watch him. But all I saw was you put on the tape, or you lay there and watching the practices live, and you put on the tape afterwards, and you see number 83 just making catches. A guy that's creating some separation. Being able to get over the top on DBs, and a guy that really just stood out for me in terms of the East-West Shrine game practices there. So you go back and you take a look at what he did in North Carolina, and Antoine Green is a kid that averaged. I want to make sure I'm got it right here. He averaged about 18. Almost 19 yards a catch last season, 798 yards, 7 touchdowns. Previous year, at almost 20 yards a catch with 5 touchdowns. So this is a guy that makes big plays. Just, down there in North Carolina, a lot of people don't hear about him, but you can see right here, in terms of his size, he's 6'2", 201. He's got good size, 32 and 5/8 in terms of his arm length. The hands they're under 9 inches, a little bit, a little bit worrisome there. You want a little bit 9 inches or higher in terms of hand size, but you watch his tape and the guy makes good catches. He's the guy, again, that extend away from his frame, reels in the the ball, nice soft hands. You don't see a lot of double catches or bobbles or trapping it against his body. A guy that gives you some of that deep playability as well. But again, at 6'2", 201, if this kid comes in and if he runs, I'm not sure what he's going to run. He might run anywhere between the 4.5s or maybe high 4.4s. If he does that, I think he's going to be skyrocketed up in terms of where teams are going to look at him, because I think he came in possibly to East-West Shrine game, like 6th, 7th round kind of guy, 5th round possibly. I think now if he has a good combine and continues on kind of just taking the momentum he created at the East-West Shrine practices and has a great combine and then moves into his pro day, I think you're looking at a guy that could go as high as the 4th round, maybe tail end of the 3rd round. That's how, in terms of how he impressed a lot of scouts down at the East-West Shrine game.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that report, Neil. Let's stay in the skill positions. Let's go. Why don't you give me a running back? We'll spin the wheel here and come up with running back Tyjae Spears, one of my favorites down from the Senior Bowl. What do you got on him?
Yeah, Tyjae Spears, I tweeted about him during the Cotton Bowl last month, and what he did against University of Southern California was absolutely impressive. Then you pair together with what he did in Mobile this past week, and you're talking about an absolutely sparkling 2023 for Tyjae Spears so far. And I think he was on the American team. Yeah, 5'0", 204, 10-inch hands, big old hands, 35-ace arms. Good size for, good length measurables for a little bit shorter of a kid. But, that's not to say that this kid is tiny. That's not to say that this kid doesn't have strength, because he held his own during one-on-ones in terms of, picking up the blitzes, pass rush drills all week. And he had some incredible plays made in the passing game as well. That's all the same types of stuff that he was able to show during the season, during that bowl game as well. The ability to take the ball out of the backfield in the running game, the ability to make plays in the passing game, and, help his quarterback out when blitzers came through the line. He's a really interesting kid. He was actually the guy that the scouts and executives at the end of the week labeled their practice player of the week, going into the game day on the weekend. So I like this kid a lot, just from what I've seen, watching him live, again, last month during the bowl game, seeing him a little bit this week in practice. Got to be honest, I want to go back and watch more film before I can really peg him as a guy that's going to come in and help us out right away. I think Chase Brown is another one of those guys from the week that really impressed me from the running back position. But Tyjae Spears, the execs like him.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I arrived at Mobile over to the convention center for the opening press conference, he was there earlier than me, and I got there around 7 o'clock. He had some media interviews, and so I was able to get him after he had completed a radio interview. And one of the things that impressed me that he shared with me is that he really didn't have to play in that bowl game, but he wanted to because of his teammates. He had suffered a hamstring injury earlier in the season, missing the first 4 games or so. And so you would think that a guy, okay, I'm going to protect my investment here and not play in the bowl game, but he did play and had his best game of the season. And when I asked him, if a scout asked you, what tape should I pull up? He said that USC game and that bowl game. And so he had a tremendous performance that game. And I see, Danny, you've been nodding your head. You're a fan of Tyjae Spears, right?
Yeah, I watched that bowl game against USC, and he was a man among boys, and he carried that Tulane team versus the that USC Trojans team, and the one thing about him, and I haven't dug deep into his tape because I'm leaving running backs to a little later part here in terms of the order, pecking order I'm going in terms of these position groups here, but while watching him, he's a smooth runner, in terms of body control, be able to bounce off contact, is a pass catcher. And I don't know, Neil, if you had a chance to take a look at the linebacker versus running back blocking drills, and he's a guy that will block, will stick his head in there, he'll take on linebackers, he'll take on contact, and he'll protect his quarterback. So those are some key things as well for him. So Tyjae Spears, again, guys, this is a reason why I don't give running backs their second contract. This is a reason why I can find you guys in the draft that'll come in. And Tyjae Spears wasn't even the running back I was looking at in terms of the Senior Bowl. Deshawn Johnson, unfortunately, broke a bone in his hand and wasn't able to play. But he was a guy that I was really looking at to see, in terms of possibility for the Bears. And then another kid I know, Neil, you kind of liked as well, is McIntosh from Georgia as well. So there are talented players here at the running back position, and Tyjae Spears is just one of them. And another thing about it, guys, I don't know, it just might be me being nostalgic here, but number 22 running back from Tulane, give you any sort of Matt Forte vibes here at all, or what?
Yeah, different types of players, no doubt, but yeah, definitely could yield the same kind of results despite their different playing styles. I like Tajay.
That particular
smooth runners.
Sorry.
Yeah, he is. And what's interesting, maybe there is more similarities between how they run because
and the pass catching ability as well.
Oh, absolutely. That is a skill that perhaps he was underutilized at Tulane, the pass catching abilities. And I think that a team would be wise to take advantage because the kid has really good hands. And I know Neil is nodding his head because he saw that in the practice tape, just like I did. Tajay Spears, remember the name. Whatever team he lands up with, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. All right, let's we're not done with skill players yet, but I want to go over to the defensive tackle position because there's somebody that Danny wants to talk about, and that is Chris Sims, I believe his name is. Dante.
Dante Stills. Yeah,
Dante Stills. Thank you.
From West Virginia. He's a guy that in our previous show, the last time we talked about, in terms of guys I'm looking forward to, he was the guy that I highlighted in terms of this kid from West Virginia. He played at the odd man front, was used as a defensive end. I didn't feel that was his best position. I think he's a guy that can kick inside and be a 3 technique, and that's where they utilized him here at the East-West Shrine game. And the kid was noticeable. He was popping in every practice. He came in at 6'3", 289 with 32 and plus inch arm length, quick off the snap in terms of being able to, and then the hand use to go with. He's got the rip move. He's got a swim move. He can cross the face of the offensive guard and get into the gap. Definitely a guy that showed off what I was hoping he'd show off, and that's the ability to kick inside and play a 3 technique in this defense. And I think Dante Stills is a guy that to keep an eye on if you're a Bears fan, looking at in case you don't get if you trade down, you don't have a Jalen Carter sitting there for you, or if you miss on defensive tackle in the first, second, or even if you want to get some depth. We've talked about it multiple times. Bring in multiple good depth players here. Dante Stills is a guy that you can kick inside a defensive tackle, and I think he could be a nice fit, a really ideal fit as a 3 technique in this defense.
I like him. Was that the guy? Was that the guy when I was at the bar watching the East-West Shrine Bowl game from Mobile, and I text Danny and I say, "Man, that defensive tackle is good." And see, he sends me a hand face palmed emoji and saying, "That's the guy I was talking about the other night on the show." And I go, "Oh, that's right."
That's one, multiple guys. Yeah,
that's good. Good stuff there. Let's before we get to you, Neil, I want to see if we can get a couple of these questions out of the way. Cliff Victoria was talking about Smith Njimba of Ohio State. You think that he's going to drop because of that hamstring injury this past season? I mean, I think he only played 3-4 games at Ohio State, and when he played well, it was because he had great receivers with him, although he had great receivers last season. But he is a huge question mark, this Ohio State wide receiver that a lot of people are figuring as a first-round selection. But I don't know, man. I've got to think that he's probably going to fall unless he has a tremendous combine. Then he would be assured a first-round pick. What do you guys think, Danny?
Unless he comes out and runs a 4.3 40, the kid's going in the second round. I can tell you that. I've heard some things that I'm not at privy to let out here right now, but let's just say there's some concerns about Jackson Smith and Jigba in terms of this past season, particularly with I don't want to say character, but just some question marks. And he's going to have to go to the combine and these meetings and really sell teams about what happened this past season. That's all I got to say.
Interesting. Neil, you've heard any words on our man there, Njimba?
Not to that point, but I also haven't really broached that topic with anybody yet either, though. So, the interesting thing is that you couple that together with the fact that the kid has had a little bit of an issue staying healthy consistently. That's going to raise a lot of red flags. So, yeah, the combine week is going to be huge for this kid, answering some questions. And, being honest and upfront, like we have talked about before with some of these players that, they've had red flags, pop up during the season. It's time to, bring down those red flags and answer the questions and eliminate the concerns.
All right, let's get back to the skill positions. Neil, you liked what you saw out of Kenny McIntosh, the running back. Take it away.
Yeah, the other tailback on the American team I liked. Out of all the tailbacks, there's three that really stood out as potential third, three down guys. We already talked about Tyjae Spears, Kenny McIntosh, Chase Brown, those three guys. Kenny McIntosh, I mean, we've seen plenty of Georgia on the big screen on the national stage in the past couple of years. We've seen plenty of what Kenny McIntosh can do. Came in at just under 6 foot, 210 pounds, great size. Length numbers, he's got 9 on the hands, just over 30 and a half on the arms. So, in terms of the measurables, I think he was probably the best looking kid out there, save for the kid from Appalachian State that didn't have as good of a week. But, he's, like I said, great size. He runs the ball with plenty of power and aggression. And just like, Tyjae this week made plays out of the backfield, made plays in the passing game, and showed up really well in that one-on-one running back linebacker drill that we saw Tyjae excel at. I could say that maybe Kenny McIntosh did a little bit better of a job, was more consistent, keeping linebackers off the ball and just sticking his nose in there and being stout in terms of pass pro. And that's what I'm looking for. If we get to the point to where we're going to have to give up on David Montgomery as being a part of this offense, I want to see somebody come in being a third down guy, somebody that could be a dynamic playmaker in all three facets of the game. It's tough to say, pass pro is a part of dynamic playmaking, but to be honest with you, we can keep Justin Fields off the ground and, bones unbroken and off of the IR and out of the training room. And that's definitely a necessary part of the running back game. So I really like what Kenny McIntosh has showed on film throughout his career, what he did this week in practice. I think he was very solid and definitely a prospect for us.
Yeah, I think it was Dan Aguirre on last night's Bear Their Soul show was saying that, our Chicago Bears #1 rushing team in the NFL, but relying too much on Justin Fields' legs, and we really need to get these running backs to handle the brunt of the running, and so we can save our quarterback. Anyway, what are your thoughts on McIntosh?
Yeah, for me, McIntosh is a third down back, a guy who's good out of the backfield in terms of catching passes, a guy that gives you some speed element at the running back position. But in terms of a guy that's going to be, count on if your starter goes down, he's your starter. I don't think he's a guy that can be successful running in between the tackles. He's more of an outside guy. I don't like the way he runs. He runs a little bit upright. It's a guy, for 210 pounds, 6 feet. I know he's got decent size, but I like to see him lower his pad level and take on contact. But he tends to run out of bounds a lot. But again, if you're talking about him being like a third, back instead of like a trusted Ebner, I think McIntosh gives you that ability as a pass catcher and brings that added dimension out of the backfield. But in terms of being a guy that you can count on to be a starter after if your starter goes down, I have some questions in terms of McIntosh at that point, but definitely a guy that's talented, got speed, great hands. Again, could be a weapon coming out of the backfield for you.
During that marathon recording session that I had with Greg Gabriel, he said you can get 5 scouts in a room and you're probably going to walk away with 5 different opinions on the same tape that they saw. That is the nature of the business. All right, Danny, let's stick with the defensive tackles. You gave us Dante Stills. Let's talk about Deshawn Johnson, the defensive tackle out of Toledo.
All right, yeah. So Deshawn Johnson, or Deshawn Johnson, I believe that's how he pronounces it, is a kid out of Toledo. I hadn't seen him. So I came back after watching him at the East-West Shrine game and put on a tape at versus Ohio State, and obviously going up against Ohio State, he's outmanned there. But what I like about him is, again, another kid that has the ability, the quickness off the snap to be able to get into those gaps, pierce into the backfield, and bring the running back down for a loss. And the one thing you put on his tape, you see effort. And he's a guy that will not, his motor runs hot. And again, we're talking about the hits principle here that Matt Eberflus preaches. He wants guys that are lean, athletic, strong, and guys that they'll pursue, backside, pursue downfield. And I think Deshawn Johnson gives you that. And what he did at the East-West Shrine practices was just show his ability to be able to get into the backfield and create havoc in terms of, on a run defense, he was aggressive in terms of his run fits, made himself as a presence there in between the guard and the center. In terms of the pass rush, he's not there yet in terms of a fully developed repertoire, but definitely a guy that uses the ability to be able to kind of, use that speed to power, get into the offensive lineman and kind of walk them back into the backfield. So he's definitely a guy. Again, we're talking about guys on day 3 here that you can bring in and develop and continue to grow. But what I want to see is I want to see that twitch ability and the ability to get into the backfield and make a difference and make plays there. And whether it's the passing game or versus the run defense, I want him to see him be effective. And that's what he showed this past week at the East West Shrine practices.
I'll tell you, Neil, that kid really loves to body slam ball carriers to the ground. You see that highlight reel? I mean, he's grabbing him by the waist and he's throwing him down like he's a member of the World Wrestling Federation. He's quite the name.
WWE's got a future.
WWE. I can't follow. What is it? WWE, WWE. I don't know, but I've never been a big wrestling. I've never been a big wrestling fan.
If you got some extra scratch kicking around, go ahead and invest in WWE before this thing really taking off.
There you go. All right.
Just the point to kind of just emphasize the point of him being able to get into the backfield. He had 45.5 career tackle for loss at Toledo. So he's a guy that found, obviously, the level of competition is not he's not not playing it in SEC or anything like that, but that's production there, being able to get into the backfield and like I said, making his presence felt.
For sure. All right, let's stay with. Say again.
Love the Matt Daddies.
Yeah.
Week action, Matt Daddies.
Indeed. Let's stay at the defensive tackle position, Neil, and talk to me about Keanu Benton from Wisconsin.
Yeah, Keanu Benton was a kid that I had previewed on the show a couple of weeks back. I can go back to my notes on that. Just real quick here. Keanu Benton.
Yeah, I'll just say while you look for your notes, I'll just say this: that the kid was super at the Senior Bowl practices. A lot of people talking about him, so he's a riser.
Absolutely, and that was a kid that you talk about the kid's background a little bit. He ended the season on an absolute tear for Wisconsin. Ended up accumulating 36 tackles, 10 for loss, 4.5 sacks, was third team All Big Ten. He was the kid that, coming out of high school was debating on whether or not he wants to continue playing the sport that he loved. He wasn't getting the looks. He wasn't getting phone calls. He wasn't getting the offers, all certain types of things. And his wrestling coach, with the help of his wrestling coach, got on Wisconsin's radar. And, he's all about run defense. He's all about strength. I was really looking forward to seeing the one-on-one to see what he could throw. And that kid absolutely doing it. He's just, his hands, his ability to execute pass rush moves. He's quick. He's violent. There's a few times I thought we're going to have to send some of these offensive linemen into the training rooms to treat their arms with the way that he was, moving out of the way. Moves and against just violent hands was very impressive. Agility, again, the power aspect of what he's able to do. Very impressive kid. 6'3.5", 312 pounds is what he weighed in. And 33, almost 34-inch arms. So he's able to create that separation, big reach. But his thing going into this week was big time run stopper, violent, strong hands, and he absolutely showed that and then some this past week in Mobile.
Danny, I'm pretty sure you like this kid too, right?
Yep, he's a kid that I've talked about. He's a kid I've previewed, and I said, he's at Wisconsin, and Neil's right. He is a run stuffer. He's a guy that will, play that odd man front. He takes on blockers, two gapping. He was a guy who was immovable in terms of in the middle of the defensive line, and he was known more for that effort in terms of being able that defensive force in terms of the run defense. And I thought maybe he could play a one technique in this system, so that's why I really liked him and previewed him. However, what he showed me down at Mobile and watching him play is he came in at 6'4", 312 with 33, 6'8" in terms of arm length, but he showed me some quickness, and he showed me an ability to pierce that backfield. Again, we talked about his hand strength. He's got strong as man hands, and when he knocks the offensive lineman, he knocks the head back. You see that power and that strength there, and you can just right there, you shock the offensive lineman, and you just walks him back into the lap of the quarterback. But what I saw here was I saw the ability to go ahead and do a swim move and get into the gap and get upfield, things that I didn't see at Wisconsin consistently on tape. So, maybe he's showing a different aspect of his game now that he's out of the college ranks and now kind of putting it all together here at the pro ranks. But definitely, I think he's a kid that really kind of opened up a lot of eyes in Mobile. And right now, I mean, he went from a run stuffing, fourth round pick to probably a second round pick now. And if he continues this trajectory in terms of, showing off some more of his skill set that we hadn't seen on tape at the combine, and obviously it blows him away. With the interviews, he's gonna go higher up. And the one thing mentioned, he's a wrestler. And one thing about wrestlers, and whenever I look at offensive line or defensive line, is if you have a wrestling background, that piques my interest, because they know how to use their hands to gain leverage. It's all about leverage, maintaining leverage, and I think that's something that's going to benefit him as he moves on to the next level. So yeah, Keanu Benton, a guy that I thought was going to be maybe a run stuffing, defensive tackle, now has the potential to be a guy that could slide into either the 1 or a 3 technique at the next level.
I'm so excited about the crop of defensive tackles in this draft. I mean, if we don't get our guy Jalen Carter, which some people I know aren't super high on, but there seems to be a lot of other alternatives if we go somewhere else with our first round draft pick. All right, I want to stay at that defensive tackle position, and let's talk about Moro Ojomo, the defensive tackle from Texas that you saw out in Vegas, Danny, and why don't you take it away?
Yeah, Moro Ojomo is another guy that I previewed, in terms of before I went down to Vegas, and I just want to see what I saw on tape. What I saw on tape was a guy that stat-wise didn't jump out on you, but if you put on his tape, right, you see a guy that was a force in the middle of the defensive line, a guy that was I saw him as more of like a 1 technique, a guy that can maintain his ground and help you run defense. But what he did down in Vegas was, he showed his ability, again, to maintain his ground in terms of run defense, could be a 1 technique, but then also showed an ability to get into the backfield. Now, he's a guy that's got to work on his pass rush game. We talked about Benton here showing off some of the pass rush skills that we didn't see as a Wisconsin tape. I think Moro's got to work on that in terms of getting better there. However, he came in at 6'2", 293 with 34+ inch arm length, and I think the scouts there love the measurables that he came in at. Is he going to be a 1 technique? Probably. Is he going to be a 3 technique? We'll wait to see. He has to prove that he can be able to pierce and get into the backfield on a more consistent basis. Again, work on that pass rush repertoire. But Moro Ojomo from Texas is a kid. Again, stat-wise, he's not going to impress you, but you put on his tape, you see the run defense, you see the ability to hustle to the football. And I think he's a guy that's going to come in and provide depth for every team that drafts him, and eventually could turn into a nice, solid starter.
Neil, this guy created news down in Texas. I think it was back in November, where he took some of his teammates to task because he didn't think that they were working hard enough. And I've isolated a 40-second soundbite when he addressed that issue.
They have to somehow see the 24-year-old, 25-year-old maybe signing their second contract in the NFL for like $50 million, as opposed to seeing the 20-year-old them making $40K off of NIL and sleeping with women and like drinking and like all that, what I'm saying? As opposed to, you got $50 million. Now you live in Spanish Oaks, you live in Westlake, you know what I'm saying? Traveling when you want. You got the Rolls Royce outside. Like, that's the life they have to see. And they have to understand that it just doesn't happen on autopilot.
Isn't that great, Neil? I mean, he's talking our language. Invest in yourself for the long term and don't go on autopilot. He sounds like a motivational speaker.
Character, culture, very clairvoyant for a kid that is, I don't know, how old is he right now? 22 years old. Yeah. That is some grown ass man stuff right there. What he's just talking about. And he's right. When you're thinking about all these kids that were at these All-Star games this week, that's the kind of attitude you have to have going into this. You have to be a grown-up. You have to treat this as a job interview. You have to look at this as the next 15, 20 years of your life in some cases, and the kind of things that he's talking about, and then the soundbite right there, that's real grown man type stuff.
Indeed. All right, let's stay on the defensive line. The kid out of Iowa State, Will McDonald, the 4th. Neil, I know you like this guy. Danny likes this guy.
I love this guy. Yeah, I love this guy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Neil, tell us why you like or love him.
Oh, hey, I'm right there with you. It's a good adjective. Love is a good adjective to describe how I feel about Will McDonald. Didn't really know too much about the kid going in outside of the fact that, he's a terror on the edge. But actually being able to watch this kid go at it, in the one-on-one pass rush drills was a lot of fun, to be honest with you. He was the one I probably enjoyed the most outside of the interior guys. The guys rushing the edge. We have a serious issue right now in Chicago of being able to get after the opposing quarterback's ass. And Will McDonald is a kid that, based on what he did in Mobile, need to watch more of the game tape on him to get a really good feel. But based on what he did in Mobile, he's a guy that could do that for us. Came in on Sunday at 6'3.5", 241 pounds, long 35-inch reach. But what he's able to do on the edge in terms of getting offensive tackles off balance, actually having some power about him, but really his game is quickness, explosion, energy, motor. Those are the types of things that allows him to win more often than not. He was able to really win consistently, down there this week against some bigger, stronger guys. Again, 241 pounds. He's got a little ways to go, I think, to where this strength staff, the coaching staff will probably want him to be, but you also don't want him to lose too much of that athletic ability that makes him so dynamic as a pass rusher. But yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch, man. Probably the only edge rusher down there that really elevated himself, I believe.
Danny, when I met him down in Mobile, they have the little desk set up for the feature interviews and stuff. So I was by the desk because I know, Danny, how high you were on him. So I didn't want to miss the interview with him. So I'm waiting for him to arrive. And he shows up and I was, wow, this guy is thin looking. And I looked at the sheet, 240 pounds. He was wearing a baggy shirt and pants. So I couldn't really tell his physique. But when I saw him out on the football field, he reminded me a bit of Leonard Floyd in terms of body type. Floyd was taller and stuff. But tell me why you love this young man, Will McDonald.
Well, Leonard, first of all, he is thin. He's 241, and that's the reason why he might go second, day two. If he's 261 or 251, he's going top 15 in this draft. I mean, you talk about production, you talk about the ability to bend the edge, talk about a first quick step off the line of scrimmage, quickness into the backfield, the ability to bend that edge, bend that corner, get perpendicular with the ground. That's what you see with these premier pass rushers, the ankle flexion, the hip flexibility, the production. And this guy was always, out there. And what surprised me was that he stayed for a fifth year at Iowa State. And that was really shocking to me. But you talk about, in terms of him and Leonard Floyd, they're athletic builds. But Leonard Floyd was an off-the-ball linebacker, sometimes being used as a pass rusher. This kid is a pass rusher. This kid is going to get after your quarterback. Like I said, the only thing with him is his size. It's 241. And then when we were previewing him, and there's this guy I was talking about, Neil, I talked about, remember Harold Landry coming out of BC? A guy that was a demon off the edge, went to Tennessee in the first round and was productive in terms of creating sacks, but unfortunately got hurt. But he's a guy similar in terms of ability to get into the backfield. This is the kind of pass rusher you're looking for in his defense. This is the kind of speed off the edge. But again, what concerns me is that size, and does he hold up in terms of his ability as a run defender? Now, to his credit, he went down to Mobile, the one-on-ones, the offensive line versus, defensive line, the run drills, he held his own. There were times he was washed out, but there's a bigger body going at him. So, but he's got to know how to use his size, his strength, his quickness, and his arm length to be able to kind of either avoid these blockers or stack and shed them and get off of them, and get off these blocks and be able to be a somewhat reasonable run defender. Because if he's not, then he's going to be utilized strictly as a pass rush specialist. So say the Bears miss out on the top guys over this, Tyree Wilson or the kid from Alabama, Will Anderson. This is the next guy in line in terms of an edge guy that can come in and be a pass rusher. And if he falls in that second round, that's going to be a key hit there for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. I'm telling you guys, this is the type of pass rusher you want. The only thing is this weight. If he was bigger, this kid's going top 10, top 15 in the draft in the first round.
Wow.
The thing about the two is that he's got that kind of frame that'll be easy to put on whatever they need to put on to get to Terry weight. I mean, in theory, he's got that kind of frame that will allow him to put an extra 10, 15, 20 pounds on, probably pretty easily too. So I look at that as not really as much of a detriment as much as an opportunity.
Yeah. Good way to put it. Danny, let's go to the offensive center position. There's a gentleman by the name of Juice Spriggs that I know you want to talk to us about.
Yeah, Juice Spriggs is the center from Penn State, and he's a kid that when I was watching the practices there, again, just you looked at him. I'm looking at centers because, guys, I've been saying it for I don't know how many weeks now. Center is a position of need for the Bears. I know some people believe in the veteran they got from Green Bay. I'm still, holding my breath there. So, and obviously, I think we've seen the experiment there with Mustafa. I think we agree he's a good kid, probably backup, not a starting center. So I'm looking for centers here, and Juice Spriggs stuck out to me because of the fact of his movement skills, his bend, his flexibility. You saw him; he could easily flip his hips into the gap and seal off the defensive lineman. Lateral agility, the guy can block moving east and west, and that's what I'm looking for in terms of this offensive scheme. The center's got to be able to not only just chip at the offensive line or chip at the line of scrimmage, help his guard, but then release to the next level and reach his second level blocker, whether it's a linebacker or a safety or whatnot. So I think that's what some of the things that you see with Juice Spriggs. Now, I know he's got a huge medical red flag. I believe he had an issue with his back. I heard some reports it was a broken back or something like that, where he came back and he played. So obviously that's going to be a medical red flag. But this is a guy you're looking at day 3, bringing in as possible a guy that can help develop and get stronger and develop into a starting center for you. In terms of feistiness, you saw that at the practices. He's 6'3", 308, so he's got good size, 33+ inch arm length. So he's got the measurables you're looking for and the athletic ability that I saw firsthand. So I think Juice Spriggs is a kid to keep in mind if you're looking at day 3, bringing in a potential center for further down the road there.
He is that athletic center that this team needs. And I'll tell you another athletic center that I fell in love with down in Mobile, and Neil's going to talk to us about now. It's John Michael Schmitz. What a specimen of an athlete and attitude. I love the guy. Neil, what do you think?
Attitude was exactly the word that I wrote down to describe John Michael Schmitz. And you look at this kid from a physical standpoint. 6'3.5", 306, 9.5 hands, 32, 6'8" arms. Nothing really screams at you, jumps out at you, blows you away out of the water. You watch this kid battle one-on-one with these big dudes inside. Stronger dudes maybe, larger dudes maybe, but he more than held his own. Just a mean, nasty demeanor type of kid who I think sort of in a lot of ways cemented himself as the easily the best center prospect in America going into this draft. It's just all demeanor with this kid. The way that he performed at practice, one-to-one battles, the strength that he operated with, his ability to anchor, just brute strength and power that he was able to win with this week. And on top of that, we talk about guys that have a ton of leadership characteristics and qualities, culture and character. Has started 50 games at Minnesota over the course of his 4-year career. So a ton of play history, and this kid is very well seasoned, and he's got the perfect demeanor to get the job done here in Chicago.
I love the young man. I'll tell you what, after one of the practice sessions where I was focused, I got really cool video of him just knocking people on their asses and then, running downfield and cheering his teammates on. I said, I got to get an interview with this guy. Well, we were not allowed past the 30-yard line, and a lot of the premier athletes or guys who had really good practices and didn't feel like talking to the media, they hung out past the 30 outside of our reach. And so I'm waiting for you, man. I'm waiting for you. Finally, he gets over to me, and I ask him this.
Yeah.
I see you push guys around today in practice. It was pretty incredible. It seems like you play with a lot of hostility. Is that fair to say?
I love this game, and I love the physicalness. I love finishing the play, and that's what we do at the University of Minnesota, and that's what translated over here. So, yeah.
Good luck to you in the NFL. Thank you. Yeah, he is definitely a byproduct of Coach Fleck and that Minnesota program. I mean, he really bought into what that coach teaches and the motivational style that he reaches into for his players. He's a super player. I'd love to see him in Chicago. And that Juice Spriggs, Danny, he's another guy. But I know, Danny, you wanted to say a couple things on Schmitz, right?
Yeah, in terms of all the positives you guys talked about, the size, the ability to offset a bull rush, the leadership, the finishing thing. But there are some concerns for me in terms of his lateral agility, in terms of lateral quickness. A lot of times, the guys were blowing right by him. He just wasn't able to move his feet. And I've talked about this system, guys. It's not about brute strength up front at the center. It's about being able to move and block laterally, maintaining your blocks, and also then getting to the next level and getting to that second level linebacker or defensive, defensive player. So the one thing I'm gonna hold off my in terms of my overall evaluation about Schmitz until I dig more into his Minnesota tape, because I want to see him at that next level. Can he get to a linebacker? Can he maintain when he gets to a linebacker? Can he maintain his blocks? How is he moving east and west? Because what I saw him in terms of the at the practices, when people come at him, yeah, he can stop them. He could stop them in their tracks. But when he saw some quickness going at him, he didn't have the lateral agility to be able to get in front of that guy and be able to maintain his block. So those are some concerns I do have about this kid. He just might not be a scheme fit perfectly in the system. So I'm just going to reserve my judgment and do some more research on Schmitz. And then once I finally get into the centers, then I'll have my scouting report for you on him and my overall grade.
Sounds good. All right. Why don't we stay at Minnesota, Danny, and talk to us about who is this guy on the defensive side of the line? Terrell Smith.
He's a corner. He's a good sized corner, fifth-year senior. Came in at 6'1", 207 pounds, 32 plus inch arm length. And he's a guy, obviously I didn't go down there looking for corners, but this guy just stuck out to me because, he was taking on, whether it's A.T. Perry or some other receiver, and he was taking him on, he was going, downfield step for step, staying in phase with them. And he had some physicality to him as well within the practice. So a corner with size and physicality. You're playing a zone scheme here, a cover two, if you will, cover three. You want corners that with some size to be able to kind of plant and come downhill with some aggression and be able to tackle and wrap up. And I think this is a kid. If you're going to, again, looking for some depth behind the starters, we know Deshawn Johnson's come up on a contract. Kyle Gordon off of an up and down rookie campaign. Too early to call him a boss or anything like that. But I'm just saying, if you're looking for some corner, you can only use corners, right? You can never have not enough cornerbacks. So I think this is a guy that caught my eye. Competitive, feisty, good sized corner. I think will be a nice fit in this scheme. Be able to come down and wrap up. Terrell Smith, a fifth-year senior out of Minnesota, was a guy at the East-West Shrine game that stood out for me.
Neil, let's stay with the corners here, and why don't you talk to me about Darius Rush? I think he was the fastest guy via GPS at Mobiles. What do you got on him?
Yeah, he was. He clocked in at 21.65 miles per hour, which is absolutely tooling. That's not the only thing that's impressive. He also had a max deceleration of 505. So how quickly can you come to a stop and change direction? His length and his size compared with, the kind of speed that he exhibited down in Mobile is absolutely impressive. You're talking about a guy that came in at 6'1" and 5'8", 196 pounds, 32 and 6'8" arms. This dude was an absolute, piece of Velcro all week on these receivers. At points was actually running routes better than the receivers themselves. His ability to read what the receiver was doing, anticipate the next move, anticipate where he was going to go. He was a very impressive player. Definitely rose up the board for me in terms of where I had guys originally slotted going into the week. And that was, of course, without actually watching a good amount of game film in depth on a lot of these guys, especially at the secondary position, a position group I haven't necessarily gotten to yet. But, very impressive kid. And again, with that kind of size and speed, that he's basically a prototype for what college coaches are looking at coming out of high school, developing them into corners, and now what is now filtering up into the NFL to deal with these long, tall, explosive, speedy receivers that coaches are having to figure out a way to cover and deal with on a weekly basis.
You like this kid, Danny?
I do. And this kid, what he was doing in Mobile, he's showing some cover skills. I mean, there are times where he was running the route for the receiver, and you saw him jumping routes. You saw him just being able to get back in phase, but also peek back and look into the backfield and look at the quarterback. So, that is some impressive stuff, especially for a kid that's an all-star game trying to impress. It looks like the big stage wasn't anything that daunted him. So, he took he got burned a couple times. but he's a guy that will take chances. And I just like the fact that he was, in phase, and then again jumping. His ball skills are evident, and you see that right there on his highlight film. This is a guy that will make interceptions. He'll jump routes, and he has no fear. And you want that in cornerbacks. Obviously they're going to get burned once in a while, so he'll learn from those. But definitely a guy that impressed me in terms of what he was doing there in terms of the coverage.
So while we're on
practice player of the week.
Yeah, that's right. So while we're on the topic of cornerbacks, as we know, Ryan Post listed that as one of his premium positions that he wants to focus in on this offseason. So somehow, some way, unless he's bluffing for the sake of other general managers, somehow, some way, he's probably going to acquire another cornerback. How would you see? Because there are some promising young corners on this team. So how would you see the acquisition of another corner? Are we probably talking mid-day 3, late day 3 as somebody to plug in? Or do you think we could possibly see one early day 3 or on day 2? What do you think, Neil?
I think with the amount of picks that Poles has the opportunity to pick up in this draft, with the multiple moves that he can make, we could easily see Poles go ahead and take one on day 2. Is that probable? I don't know, but I think day 3 is an absolute possibility in terms of when he is definitely going to go ahead and take a corner early day 3. I think you're probably going to be able to find some good quality talent at that point in the draft to help bolster up that cornerback room. And as we've seen this past year, guys, with as banged up as our secondary guy, both at the safety and corner position, we got to look at both of those because we are not very deep at all. And those are also positions we could potentially, address in free agent periods as well. But there's a good amount of talent in this draft. There's a good amount of talent at both the corner and safety positions, so we can mobile to where I feel like if you don't get a primo guy in on day 2, you're definitely going to be able to find some guys to come in help immediately and at least provide depth, early day 3, and add to what we're doing in the secondary here in Chicago.
What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, for me, I think specifically he didn't mention corner, but I think specifically he's going to go after a nickel corner, and I think free agency is going to be the way he's going to attack it initially. And I think one name to keep an eye on is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the kid from Philly. Of course, he's popular here from when he was with the Saints and got both Anthony Miller and Javon Wims into fights. So he's got a guy. He plays nickel for the Eagles, and he's a guy that led or tied for the league lead in interceptions this year with 6. Obviously, Ian Cunningham was with Philadelphia, but that was after they acquired him this past season in a trade. So he was with the Saints. So that there's no connection there. But I think he's going to try and attack that position because remember, the nickel corner is basically a starter for this defense. And I think you've got your outside guys with Jalen Johnson and Kyle Gordon, you hope. And I think now, if you in terms of the outside guys, you bring guys in depth guys, right? You can guys maybe if you're going to go for a corner in the draft, again, depending on what you do, trade down, garner multiple picks. I can see them using a pick on a corner in day 3. But I think for that starting nickel spot, I think they're going to go after him in free agency. And I think the name to keep an eye on is this Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from Philadelphia. I think he's a guy that they could go after and try and sign here with the Bears. So, I think he's in that 27, 28 range, if I'm not mistaken. So, or maybe even younger than that, I think. But he's a kid that's talented. Obviously, we see he's an instigator. Toughness brings that cocky attitude to a defense. So I think you would love to have that infused here on this young defensive secondary for the Bears. So, but in terms of this kid here, Rush, I think he's 196. But he showed that lateral quickness and agility in the week of practice where I think he could play some nickel corner eventually if you were to draft a kid like that. So, keep that in mind as well. But and also we saw them put Kyle Gordon inside at nickel. I think that was a detriment to him because I think that's where he lost his confidence. I think he belongs on the outside, like I said when they drafted him. So we'll see how that goes. But I think initially they're going to go after a veteran. If they don't get him signed through free agency, then they're going to go maybe get one in the draft. But it's got to be a slot nickel corner.
Sounds good, Danny. I think you're up now.
What you got?
What about let's go to because I think we've got all your Shrine Bowl players out of the way. according to my list here. So why don't you talk to us about a guy who wasn't on Neil's list and one of my favorites down there, at least from a human standpoint, Yaya Diaby, the edge player out of Louisville. I got to meet him, got to interview him, and just a personal story. When he talked to me about he wants to be a NFL player so badly, but primarily so he could take care of his mom. And he started talking about his mom. I got choked up a little bit. And then when I told him that after the interview, he puts his arm around me, and what a great guy. He's very sorry he went through that. And so he's a good person. Is he a good player, Danny? Tell us.
I like him. I like him a lot. And Yaya Diaby is a guy that I heard about, but I hadn't watched him. And then I finally put his tape on. And the one thing that explodes off the tape for me is his run defense, his ability to be a solid run defender, set that hard edge. And that was a shocker because I expected this kid to be just flying off the edge. All these college pass rushers, they thinking sacks first before they even think run defense. But with Diaby, he's a run defender. You saw it on the one-on-ones at the practices down in Mobile in terms of him and the offensive lineman. He's got those 34-inch arms. You see him do that pole position where he kind of holds the offensive lineman with one arm to his side, and he maintains his gap integrity there in terms of run defense. Last year, 9 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. This kid's his frame is just chiseled. He's a tailor-made defensive end in this system. And I think if you get this kid, day 2, whether second or third round, he's a potential starter for you. And that's how much I like this kid. But, in terms of developing as a pass rusher, yeah, he's got some ways to go. He's not there yet, but, he showed tremendous promise. You can see him turn, speed to power there. Again, using his long arms to play long with 34-plus-inch arms. He's a guy that keeps the offensive lineman off his frame and gets back into that backfield, makes plays. So again, run defense starts off as what shocks me in terms of his tape and what he did in Mobile, but then also the potential he shows as a pass rusher. He's a 4-3 defensive end all day.
Danny, he reminded me a little bit of O'Shane Zimenez, who we talked to at the Shrine Bowl 3-4 years ago, and more in his play and not in his body. Diaby is a bigger, more chiseled player than O'Shane Zimenez, who went on to be drafted by the New York Giants. Just an aside, hey Jordan, how are you?
O'Shane's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think he's in that 240, 250 range, as opposed to Diaby, where he's a solid 264, could easily be 270, 275 by the time training camp starts if he wants to be, if you put some added muscle on. But he's got, like I said, that chisel frame, the long arms. He's a hand in the ground defensive end. But in terms of O'Shane, though, Zimenez, he was a 3-4 outside linebacker, and that's why we were looking at him, because they were running the Vic Fangio 3-4 system back then.
Neil, I have not rehearsed the name enough to try it here tonight on Draft on Tap, so I'll just let you introduce the defensive lineman out of Northwestern.
Adetomiwa Adebawore.
Thank you.
God
bless you.
Danny.
Go ahead, Danny. Give it a shot.
Adebawore.
Very close.
Good enough. Hey, you were in the ballpark.
I'm saying if the Bears draft this kid, I'm in trouble. So I'm just going to call him AA.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Call him
I like AA.
Call him Tommy. He'll be all right.
There you go.
Yeah, Adebawore. He was a kid that we previewed a couple weeks ago on the preview show. A guy that on a really bad team was a shining star. Played on the edge, caused a lot of havoc, and disruption whenever he was rushing the pass from the edge, but also a guy that was flexed inside as well to be able to create some backfield disruption, pass rushing, create turnovers. I mean, all those different types of things that you look from a versatile guy. Didn't come in with the kind of size you might have expected him to come in at 6'1.5", 284, but his length measurables were outstanding. Just under 11-inch hands at 1078. 34-inch arms able to create the separation, a big 82-inch wingspan at 6'1.5". It makes a difference when you're talking about a guy that is probably going to be a flex guy for some teams. I like him as an interior pass rusher for us, but the ability to go ahead and create separation with his arms, to be able to get in the backfield using his hands. And this kid's game is nothing but strength, explosion, and power. And he does have a very well-developed pass rush arsenal. He has a plan going into the way that he attacks. He's tactical, and he's kind of in the same way. If you think about an athlete when he's out on the edge, if he's leaving that kind of terminology. That's kind of how I feel with this kid. If he's able to at least keep with the guy blocking him, he's going to get to home base. All right. He was very impressive in one-on-ones. He really showed off that power, really showed off that strength, and he was able to actually utilize a really good amount of lateral agility while engaged, showing that he has that sort of like quick twitch, tightly wound explosion about him, and he can create big plays. He's a really interesting kid. Loved what I watched by him all year. Was really excited to see him in Mobile this past week, and he really showed me some beautiful things.
Danny, he played a lot of 30 tech when Northwestern was in their nickel defense. So he has seen some play there. What do you think about him when you've seen him?
Yeah, my thing was when I saw him first time on tape, I said this kid's going to be an inside defensive tackle. I just didn't know his size. I didn't know his measurables. But like Neil said, 6'2" is a little bit shorter, but that's fine. 6'2" is okay, because he's got the 34-inch arms, and he showed the ability to be able to take on bigger bodies at Mobile in terms of his run defense. He's quick as heck off the snap, guys. His ability to get penetration, get into the backfield, tailor-made for this scheme. So I think, there's no questions now. It's just a matter of in terms of where you're going to be able to pull a trigger on a kid like this. So definitely a guy that I think fits his scheme like a glove. A 3 technique all day, and that measurement, the height's not great, but the rest of it's pretty damn good, and his tape is pretty damn good as well. So I think this is a guy that, again, you could bring if you get this guy in day 3. That's a steal for me, because you can plug and play him right away at probably at defensive tackle. So we'll come and give you depth. I'm saying he's gonna be a starter day 1, but a guy who can develop and become eventually a really good, worst case scenario, he's a really good rotational player in your defensive line front.
Great. Danny, I'm going to stay with you here. Why don't you pick a player, because I do want to end this show in about 10 or 15 minutes. So I want to make sure you get in a player or two that you definitely want to share with our audience tonight.
All right. So the one receiver I talked about, I kind of teased it earlier in terms of receiver, I think could be a Terry McLaurin. There's two that I like a lot here, and it could be a Terry McLaurin type guy that comes in, not really, highly touted, but then next thing you know, he could have a really good NFL career. The first one is Jaden Reed from Michigan State. He's a kid that was primarily a punt returner, special teams guy at Michigan State. Saw some time on offense. He came in at 5'11". I believe I think it was 200 some pounds. I want to say
191.
201.
191.
191. Okay. So he's a kid that impressed me with his ability in terms of his ability to get off the line of scrimmage, get a clean release, and then just show that speed, that burst to be able to get downfield, whether it's in a slot or whether you bubble screens, slip screens, and whatnot. He's a guy that you can even kick him to the outside and just have him run some go routes. So, he showed that burst, that speed, the acceleration that I had not seen, to be honest with you. And to be honest, I haven't even watched a lot of Michigan State football during the season. But just the ability to go up, attack the football, be aggressive at the catch point, and along with that speed, I think this is a kid. We talked about some of that punt return ability, so I'll give you some added dimension there on special teams. Jaden Reed really helped himself down in Mobile. If he goes and runs anywhere near a 4.4 or even a 4.3, this kid, the sky's the limit in terms of where he might go. He impressed people that much. Now, obviously the rest of the things we have to look in terms of the interviews and all that stuff has got to work out, but Jaden Reed from Michigan State opened some eyes down in Mobile. He opened my eyes. I'm definitely I have him pegged in terms of a guy that you can probably bring in here and give you some of that added playmaking ability. Because I think the Bears, what they're going to be looking for, they're going to be looking for guys that create separation, as opposed to so think more Donald Mooney than a guy like a Claypool or something like that, a bigger body guy. So I think that's something that they're going to be looking for here as we go forward in terms of the draft and all that stuff. So the other receiver that I want to talk about is Michael Wilson from Stanford. A little bigger body, 6'2", 216. But what he showed me some quickness, some twitch at the line of scrimmage to be able to, again, get off of get away from a corner, create instant open separation, I should say, from the defensive back. And then he showed the ability to make plays down the football field. Now, there was one throw, it was like, I think it was ruled out of bounds, but he made a hell of a throw in terms of contouring his body, adjusting to the poorly thrown football, and making a catch in the end zone, again, was ruled out of bounds. But just the ability to be able to go up there, track the football, and then make that play. Michael Wilson from Stanford is a kid also caught my eye as well. So these are two receivers, guys, to keep an eye on. They really impressed them, improved their stock down in Mobile and impressed a lot of scouts there. And I think these are two guys that to keep in mind in terms of potentially, day 3, they're receivers for the Bears.
Neil, why don't you pick a couple of players that you want to highlight for our followers?
Well, just real quick on those two guys. I think, you mentioned about Jayden Reed's speed. He's definitely going to be in the 4.4 conversation because he clocked just over 20 miles an hour on the zebra down there in Mobile. So he's definitely got some wheels. Same thing with Michael Wilson. He was at 19.9, just under 20. But again, as Danny pointed out, so quick at the line of scrimmage, able to create separation so easily. Was one of my top 5 favorite players to watch all week, to be honest with you. I loved watching him during one-on-ones. And as you heard Jay Kane say, the quarterback from Fresno State, who got the quarterback player of the week. And again, all these awards, guys, these are all determined by their peers, voted on by their peers. So,
right.
For instance, Jay Reed, who got the wide receiver practice player of the week, was determined by the cornerbacks and safeties that they went against throughout the entirety of practice, right? So, Jayden Reed did a monument this week. But again, Michael Wilson was my favorite receiver of the entire week. It was so much fun to watch. And we're talking about a kid that's going to have 4.4 speed. He's got this quickness at the line. He's going to rip up those agility drills at the combine in a month. But he's also doing it with size, guys. He's got he came in at 6'0", 6'1", and 5'8", 216 pounds. And he's also got 31-inch arms and a pretty good wingspan. So he was the guy that Jay Hainer loved to throw to all week. He was the guy that Hainer singled out when all the media guys asked, "Who's your favorite guy this week? Who are you targeting? Who do you love throwing to? Who do you have a connection with?" And he pointed out Michael Wilson without even really batting an eye. I can easily see because not only did he connect with all those quarterbacks down this week, but those two seem to have a special connection. Now, granted, they also work out in the offseason right now, getting ready for the draft. But Michael Wilson, I think, is a guy that's going to come in and potentially be that one missing link out of the wide receiver room that's going to be what we're looking for. In terms of other players that I really liked this week, I touched on Chase Brown last week. I touched on this week already. I think he's really interesting, a potential 3-down back. I know some people don't really like his size, but I think that he has a lot of the things that we love in Montgomery. I see a lot of those things in him. He has good speed. He's got the toughness. He showed up really well in the one-on-one pass drills with the linebackers. And, he's a weapon out of the backfield as well. So I think that kid's really interesting. And if you listen to all the interviews and the storylines and everything else that the NFL Network was putting out last week about the kid's background, mom having troubles, the kids having to overcome adversity. They came into the United States from Canada. You're talking about kids that, from a character standpoint, have everything you want. A couple of offensive linemen that I think that could come in and help us right away. Darnell Wright, the right tackle from Tennessee, 6'0", 5'1", 342 pounds, big, strong, nasty, physical guy that has really good lateral agility. And with 34 1/8 arms, has great reach and can really keep those edge rushers at bay. Did a really good job this week. Got beat a couple times. Has a short memory. Came back and battled. I loved his demeanor all week. Osiris Torrance, the left guard from Florida, that came in at a monstrous, just under 6'5", 337 pounds with 11.25-inch hands and just under 34-inch arms, was an absolute brick wall all week. I loved what he did during one-on-ones. Nobody could beat the guy. Nobody could get past him, and he pretty much manhandled everybody. As well as McClendon Curtis, a little bit smaller of a brick wall. by that, I mean 331 pounds, but just under 6'6". He's got 10.25 hands, 35-inch arms. Again, guys, massive arm length. Is able to help these guys win and control the line of scrimmage. He was stout, anchored well, another brick wall type of player. And then, the guy that I wish I could have seen more of, DeJuan Jones, 6'8 1/8", 375 pounds, came in approximately 20 or so. Well, depending on what his actual playing weight was during the season, he came in suspected about 20 pounds overweight, looked a little bit sloppy, but still moved incredibly well. 11.5-inch hands, 36 5/8 arms, just unbelievable length measurements. He has an 89.5-inch wingspan, which I think somebody said during the coverage was the largest wingspan in the history of NFL scouting, which is absolutely absurd. You know, the rumors are that had he not injured his arm after practice one, that they were going to actually send him up into space and take down the China balloon. Just going to bear hug the damn thing, bring it back down to earth. I wish we were able to see more of him actually, during practice, but he had to, bow out after day one. He was walking around the sidelines with a sling the rest of practice, and that's entirely unfortunate. But those are some other players that really stood out to me, and almost forgot about Payne Durham in terms of tight ends. A guy that we could look at to bring in to be another option next to Cole Kmet. Payne Durham, love to watch him play at Purdue over the course of his career. 6'5", 258, moves really well, great in the passing game, physical in the blocking game, made some big plays during the game and during the practice week. Won tight end practice player of the week for the national team. I think he's an impressive player. He could definitely be an option for us.
Cliff asked the question, any kickers, punters worth drafting? And the punters at the Senior Bowl were pretty good. The kickers were okay, but I do like that kid. I'm forgetting his name. Maybe, Neil, you remember, you got the sheet in front of you. The kicker from Maryland, I thought he played fairly well. First day of the practices, he was booing them really, really well. And you hear that sound, the sound of those kickers make when they strike the ball. Yeah. That's what you want to hear. And he had a nice booming sound. And the couple of punchers, Chad Ryland, that's his name. Mm-hmm. Danny, did you see any kickers or punters at the Shrine Bowl game that caught your attention?
Oh, the kid from Michigan, which came to be the MVP of the game. He was the best player there offensively. But I just want to come up real quick in terms of some of the players that Neil brought up, and I have a couple players I want to bring up as well in terms of counterpoint. But DeJuan Jones, I mean, I love his measurables, but the kid is fat. I mean, he's straight out fat. And I don't think that he's going to be a guy that they're going to look here, because he's not a guy that's going to be able to get out in space and be a lead blocker. Think of an athletic offensive lineman. Same thing with Darnell Wright. I mean, his lateral mobility was just bad, and he's a waist bender. He's a guy that doesn't really use his knees to bend and natural bend, and just uses his bends from the waist and then just stops moving his feet. Now, a lot of that was in the one-on-one pass drills, and a lot of times those are unfair to judge offensive linemen with. So obviously we'll go through the due process and look at them as well. But those are some of the things that but those two players, two offensive linemen that caught my eye and I think fit nicely in this scheme is this kid Nick Saldiveri from Old Dominion. He's a guy at 6'6", 311. 33-inch arms. He's a natural athlete. Looks like guy who plays right guard, play left guard. He's a guy that moves laterally. I think he's a guy that could be a day 3 pick there. And Matthew Bergeron, the tackle from Syracuse, comes in at 6'4", 323 pounds with 33-inch arms. And he played nicely at left tackle. But those measurables typically get kicked inside the guard. He got lined up a guard a lot of times. So if he's a guard at the NFL level, I can see that. But he's a guy that athletically, man, at least his feet, his bend, his ability to get, stop get to the set point quickly, really stood out there for me in Mobile. So I think that's a kid to keep an eye on there as well. And a couple more receivers. I know we talked about, actually, no, let me talk about this defensive lineman that I really liked. And this kid, Carl Brooks from Bowling Green, really showed out in terms of his ability to get into, again, we're talking about a guy that's got the ability to get into the backfield, a guy that can, showed well in terms of his run defense as well. So coming from Bowling Green, obviously he's a guy that, doesn't have the big name, but if you look at his stats, what he did, he had 18 tackles for loss last year with 10 sacks. First career is at 46 tackles for loss with 27.5 sacks and five forced fumbles. So, that kid, Carl Brooks from Bowling Green, was a surprise for me. I'd never heard of him, honestly, but just watching him throughout the week, he just kept popping for me. He's a guy that I keep an eye on as well in terms of, going down here, day 3 possibly, in terms of guys they can bring in here. Again, fits that profile, what the Bears look for their interior defensive linemen.
I want to get a couple
combine list.
Did he?
I'm sorry?
I think he did. I think Indy left him off the combine list.
He didn't make. He's a combine snub. Yeah, Carl Brooks was a combine snub. There's all the players I want to get into later on, but in terms of guys that I was shocked that they were not invited to the combine.
Yeah, but I think we've got another show before the combine, so we will definitely talk about that then. I wanted to get a couple of questions. Ravi the hypothetical. The Bears traded down and picked up draft picks, and Bijan is there late first round or early second. Do you pull the trigger? Niel Stopczynski, you first.
Man, it'll be hard not to. that dude would immediately come in and make our backfield arguably the most dynamic in the league, already having Justin Fields. I mean, he was a kid that was tracking at the high school level, knew that he was going to be an impact player at Texas, splashed immediately in a big way. It'd be really hard not to pull the trigger. It's certainly intriguing. It's certainly worth a thought. If I'm Ryan Poles, I'm sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to just walk past a guy like that.
Yeah. What do you think, Danny?
Nope. I don't pull trigger. I don't pull trigger on a running back, and I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's going to be a good player. But I forgot who just put up there. He's not, to me, he's not a generational talent. He's a guy that, and plus I don't like drafting running backs in the first round. We've already talked about a couple of running backs that we could probably get day 2 here. So I don't pull a trigger there. Plus, you need to tell me if you drafted a defensive lineman, you drafted an offensive lineman, what have you done already? If your first pick in this draft is going to be a running back, whether it's the last pick in the first round or whatever, no, I'm good. I move on. Good player, but I don't use a first round pick on running backs.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, if it's one of those situations where he's our first or second pick, yeah, absolutely not, because we have bigger needs. But if theoretically we could accumulate a couple more, first round picks, and he said, we already got our D lineman or O lineman, and maybe somebody else. I don't know, man. It's intriguing to think about at the very least. I'm not saying I'd do it, but it's intriguing to think about.
I agree with you. It is intriguing thought. Would not want to devote a first round draft pick to a running back, but if he's there late, if he's there with that pick that you got from the Steelers for Claypool, bottom of the second round, you got to be thinking about it very, very heavily. Any top running back.
Bijan Robinson's not going to get past Buffalo, guys.
You don't think so?
No.
Look at this guy. He's already got his mock draft set up for the entire league. Don Burr, we always love to entertain Don Burr's questions, and he's asking about Justin Shorter out of Florida. Any of you guys know Justin Shorter? Want to offer some advice for Don about Shorter's future in the NFL?
Yeah, Shorter is a big body receiver. I think it came in about 6'4", something like that. I think he was down at the East-West Shrine game. Just a big body receiver out of Florida, average about 20 yards per catch this past season, 577 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he's a guy that's just a big body receiver, a guy that's not going to be blazing in terms of running a 4.3 or anything like that, a 4.4. But he's definitely a guy that if you want a big body receiver to the outside, and I think you guys are good at receiver. I'm not sure if you're looking for a receiver for the Lions there, Don Burr, but definitely a big body guy. Made some nice catches. A guy that can gives your quarterback a nice big target to throw at too. So definitely a guy that you're probably going to end up getting. I would say maybe day 3 of the draft.
Okay. All right. Before we go, Super Bowl is this Sunday. Want to get your thoughts on the game, Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. I personally think this is going to be one of the best Super Bowls of all time. 2 really, really good teams with fascinating stories up and down the offensive, defensive lines, the quarterbacks, the skull session that's going to happen between these 2 coaching staffs. I'm really excited about this upcoming Super Bowl. Neil, your thoughts on the game, and if you want to venture a guess on who's going to win, I'd love to hear it.
Well, man, I'm still evaluating that part of it. I have no idea, but what I'm looking forward to seeing is arguably the best line in the NFL against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. 2 of the, great quarterback stories in the NFL, to the, a great, coaching story in the NFL. There's so much going on. For people to say that there's no storylines and, this media week is boring and everything else, man, that I don't think you got to watch it. There's so much shit going on that, I really personally think that, if you look at the way that the Philadelphia Eagles kind of dominated in the trenches against San Francisco. And again, the other thing too is none of these teams, I believe, have trailed so far in the playoffs. They've pretty well controlled every game that they've been in. The Eagles have absolutely destroyed both of the teams that they played. But
Bengals had a lead over the Chiefs.
Do I know?
The Bengals had a lead over the Chiefs.
Did they?
So the Chiefs did trail. You said none of the teams trailed in the playoffs. The Chiefs did trail to the Bengals.
Oh, so Field Yates led me wrong.
Fuck Field Yates. Oh, excuse me.
Son of a bitch. I'm going back to that. Hang on. Maybe I read the thing wrong. Hang on a second. Let me pull this up.
But
he had some really good. He has some really good tidbits so far. And the one thing that he tweeted out. This is bizarre. And if this is correct, the Chiefs this year, 16-3 overall record, 546 points scored, 6 All-Pros, including a Kelsey brother and their quarterback, is number 1 seed. The Eagles, 16-3 overall record, 546 points scored, 6 All-Pros, including a Kelsey brother and their quarterback, NFC's number 1 seed. I mean, that's some galactic, coincidence, planetary alignment type stuff, right there. I mean, this is the Super Bowl. I'm hoping that everybody will see, because this is probably the 2 best teams in the NFL getting together and going at it on Sunday night. I'm amped up to watch this. I think the Eagles are going to win just based on playing the trenches. I think that this offensive line is absolutely special. Jason Kelsey's having the best year of his career, towards the tail end of his career, which is absurd. But again, with Patrick Mahomes, you got to imagine that he's pretty well healed by now. And you got to imagine that, 2 weeks out from the last time he's played on an injured ankle, that, he's going to be as healthy as he could possibly be. I think that's the ultimate, variable there in terms of if you're talking about gambling. How healthy is Mahomes? How dynamic is that offense going to be? I think the line is it still 1.5 right now? Or has Vegas finally moved it a little bit?
I think it's still 1.5.
A couple days ago. That's crazy.
Yeah,
76% of the money is on Philadelphia Eagles right now. They haven't moved the line. They're probably waiting for a definitive answer on Mahomes' foot, on an ankle. But
Andy Reid said that
it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, Andy Reid said that the ankle is well enough to for him to execute every play in the playbook. So take that for what it's worth. Maybe the playbook has been slimmed down, and he's just not telling us the complete facts behind it. Mm-hmm. Danny, what do you think about the
veteran
game?
Coach speak right there?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I got a lot to say about the game, but just real quick, Cliff Victoria, I think I saw a question pop up in the chat. He's a great listener of ours, great follower, and he asked a question in terms of my predicting the Bijan Robinson going to Buffalo. He said that they drafted James Cook last year. That's true. They drafted James Cook, but he's not an every down back, and plus Devin Singletary is a free agent. I think he's going to be gone. I think that potentially they can get Bijan Robinson in the first round. So that's to answer Cliff's question. And in terms of the game, I think you guys are right. I think it's the 2 best teams this year. I think the Eagles are going to go ahead and put a hurting on Mahomes with that pass rush. The biggest thing is that this Chiefs offensive line is the greatest offensive line in football. It's not. The Eagles offensive line might be the best offensive line in football. If you look at the Chiefs, Orlando Brown's overrated left tackle. He's not even, I don't know how he makes Pro Bowls. He's not a left tackle. Wiley at right tackle is a bump pretty much. The only guy that's good is Trey Smith and the Creed Humphrey and Tooney. So the interior is pretty good, but the tackles are going to be hurting.
Who said the Chiefs offensive line is the best in football?
No, people are not you. I'm not saying people are saying like Chiefs offensive line is one of the best in football. So I think they're not. I think that's a sham. So I think the defensive line for the Eagles are going to go after them, and I think they're going to put a hurting on Mahomes, who obviously is going to be still a little bit limited. Better, healthier than he was in the AFC Championship game, but he's going to still be a little bit limited. And he doesn't have any healthy receivers. I think all of his top weapons are pretty much hurt except for Kelsey. So we'll see what happens. But I'm predicting the Eagles to win, and I want the Eagles to win, not because I'm an Eagles fan, because this is a copycat league, and now you're going to see an offense that runs the same damn thing the Bears run, so people can stop telling me that Justin Fields is not a quarterback you can win with. So you can see that this is the exact offense that they're going to be running is the exact offense the Bears run. So for those who say trade Justin Fields, the Super Bowl champions potentially could have the same type of quarterback that you do as a Bears fan, except your quarterback is more athletic and is probably going to be a better player overall eventually in his career. So take that. That's why I want the Eagles to win, so everybody can shut up then.
Guys, fantastic job tonight. This is one of my favorite draft on taps of all time. We got a lot in 90 minutes. It was a sensational fact-filled, opinion-filled show, and the pace was fantastic. So thanks very much for all your hard work. For those of you listening live, thank you all for being a part of the chat room. You're a big part of the show when you can interact with us and we can bounce comments off of what you put in the chat. Let me remind you again about Danny's and Neil's private party. There are a few slots still open for that. It's March 1st. Just send me an email at aldo@bearsbarroom.com. Send me an email. Tell me you're interested, and I'll get you the information back. And I'm really looking forward to that. That's on March 1st of this year. So for Danny Shimon, for Niel Stopczynski, and for everyone else here at the Barroom Network, thank you all very much for being a part of this Draft on Tap. I'm Aldo Gandia. Bye-bye.